December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The morning air was calm. The water in the harbor barely moved. American sailors were still waking up when the sky began to scream. Within minutes, the United States was at war. But what most people believe about how this war unfolded, about how power shifted, how decisions were made, and how victory was engineered, is dangerously incomplete. Because while the attack on Pearl Harbor shocked America, it also awakened something far more terrifying: the full industrial, economic, and military force of the richest and most organized nation on Earth. History often frames World War II in the Pacific as a clash of courage and sacrifice. What it rarely explains is how brutally unequal the contest became once the United States stopped reacting and started calculating. And nowhere was that imbalance exposed more violently than in June 1942, near a tiny atoll called Midway. Before we go deeper, let me ask you something. If you're holding your phone right now or watching this on your screen, have you subscribed yet? If you haven't, do it now. Subscribe to World War II Dark Secrets. By the spring of 1942, Japan believed it was winning. Pearl Harbor had crippled the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Singapore had fallen. The Philippines were collapsing. From Tokyo, the war looked like a masterstroke of speed and precision. But from Washington, the war looked very different. The United States had not lost its core strength. Its aircraft carriers were intact. Its oil supply was untouched. Its factories were just beginning to shift into wartime production. And most importantly, American codebreakers were already inside the Japanese Navy's most guarded secrets. At a nondescript intelligence station in Hawaii known as Station HYPO, a small group of analysts led by Commander Joseph Rochefort were decoding fragments of Japanese naval cipher JN-25. What they uncovered was explosive. The Japanese were planning a decisive strike, a trap designed to lure America's remaining carriers into destruction. The target was identified only as AF. Washington wanted proof, so the U.S. Navy staged a deception. Midway sent an unencrypted message stating it was running out of fresh water. Soon after, Japanese intercepts reported that AF was suffering a water shortage. The confirmation was undeniable. Japan was sailing straight into an American ambush. While Japan mobilized 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, the United States quietly positioned everything it had: USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, and the badly damaged but operational USS Yorktown, repaired in an astonishing 72 hours by American dockworkers working around the clock. This was not improvisation. This was industrial power weaponized. On June 4, 1942, the battle began. Japanese aircraft struck Midway Island at dawn, inflicting damage but failing to neutralize the airfield. That failure forced a fatal decision. Admiral Chuichi Nagumo ordered his reserve aircraft rearmed for a second strike, switching from torpedoes to bombs deep inside the carrier hangars. It was a logistical nightmare. Fuel hoses ran across decks. Bombs and torpedoes were stacked wing to wing. Planes sat fully fueled, tightly packed, with no room to maneuver. At the same moment, American aircraft, poorly coordinated, undertrained, and suffering heavy losses, kept coming. Torpedo squadrons were slaughtered. Entire units were wiped out. But they achieved something priceless. They pulled Japanese fighters to sea level. And then, at 10:22 a.m., American dive bombers appeared from the clouds. What happened next did not take hours. It took minutes. Akagi was hit, then Kaga, then Soryu. Bombs punched through wooden decks and detonated among fueled aircraft. Fire raced through hangars, explosions chained together. Damage control teams were overwhelmed instantly. In less than 5 minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 fleet carriers were doomed. This was not luck. It was timing, intelligence, and overwhelming American pressure converging at the exact second Japan was most vulnerable. Hiryu launched counterattacks that crippled USS Yorktown, but American resolve did not falter. Yorktown's crew fought fires, restored power, and kept her operational until a final Japanese strike disabled her again. By sunset, American aircraft found Hiryu. She burned into the night. By the end of the battle, Japan had lost 4 fleet carriers, over 300 aircraft, and more than 3,000 of its most elite pilots and crew. The United States lost 1 carrier. The balance of power in the Pacific had snapped, and it would never return. Midway was not just a naval victory. It was an execution of strategy. Japan had gambled everything on a single decisive blow. The United States had bet on endurance, production, and intelligence. Only one of those approaches could win a long war. Within months, American shipyards were launching new carriers faster than Japan could replace pilots. American factories produced aircraft in numbers that defied belief. Oil flowed without interruption. Steel never stopped coming. Japan, by contrast, was bleeding irreplaceable experience. Every pilot lost at Midway was a veteran of China, Pearl Harbor, and the Indian Ocean. Their replacements were rushed, undertrained, and fewer in number. Japan's industrial base simply could not compete. From this point forward, the war became asymmetrical. The United States could afford losses. Japan could not. American submarines began strangling Japanese shipping lanes. Fuel shortages worsened, raw materials vanished, entire garrisons were isolated and left to starve. Then came Guadalcanal. Here again, American power revealed its true advantage. Not flawless tactics, not perfect leadership, but relentless pressure backed by unlimited logistics. The U.S. Navy lost ships, Marines suffered horrifically, but every loss was replaced. Every setback answered with more men, more guns, more steel. Japan fought with courage, sometimes brilliance, but courage does not manufacture fuel. Brilliance does not replace sunken freighters. By 1944, the outcome was no longer in doubt. What remained was the cost. American strategy shifted toward annihilation. Carrier task forces roamed freely. Japanese air power was shattered. The Philippines were retaken. Saipan fell, placing American bombers within range of the Japanese home islands. And then the bombing began. B-29 super fortresses, vast, pressurized, technologically superior, crossed the Pacific from newly built bases. At first, they aimed for factories, then for cities. Tokyo burned. Entire neighborhoods vanished in firestorms estimated to reach temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. Wooden homes ignited instantly. Oxygen was consumed. People suffocated where they stood. This was not revenge. This was calculation. The United States was ending the war on its terms. Japan's navy was gone. Its air force was broken. Its economy was collapsing. Still, surrender did not come. So the United States prepared the final solution. Operation Downfall was the planned invasion of Japan. It was designed in 2 phases, Olympic and Coronet. Hundreds of thousands of American troops, thousands of ships, an invasion force unlike anything in human history. Casualty estimates were staggering. Hundreds of thousands of American dead, millions of Japanese casualties. But what mattered was not the numbers. What mattered was that the United States could absorb them. Japan could not. Even as American planners prepared invasion maps, a new weapon was nearing completion. One born not of desperation, but of unmatched scientific investment. The Manhattan Project was the ultimate expression of American industrial warfare. Billions of dollars, entire cities built in secret, the greatest scientific minds assembled under military command. Japan never stood a chance of matching it. On August 6, 1945, Hiroshima disappeared. 3 days later, Nagasaki followed. The shock was immediate, the destruction absolute. And yet even then, elements within Japan's leadership resisted surrender. It took the direct intervention of Emperor Hirohito to end the war, not because Japan had no soldiers left, but because the United States had reached a level of power that made resistance meaningless. When American troops finally arrived, they did not come as conquerors scrambling for control. They came as administrators of a defeated nation. Japan was occupied, rebuilt, reshaped, its military dismantled, its constitution rewritten, its future redirected. This was not chaos. This was control.
World War II in the Pacific was never just a story of battles. It was a demonstration of what happens when a resource-poor empire collides with a resource-rich superpower, willing to mobilize everything it has. Japan fought with discipline, sacrifice, and extraordinary bravery, but it was fighting a war it could not sustain. The United States fought with factories, oil fields, codebreakers, engineers, and an economy larger than all its enemies combined. Midway was the moment the illusion shattered. From that day forward, Japan was reacting. America was deciding. This is the part history often softens. Victory did not come from a single heroic moment. It came from overwhelming capacity, from the ability to lose and keep going, to burn fuel without counting, to replace men, machines, and ships faster than the enemy could destroy them. That is what won the Pacific War. Not luck, not fate, power. And once unleashed, it ended the war exactly as it began it, on America's terms.